series on the Ten Commandments. Last week we started with the first commandment where God says, I am the Lord your God and you're not to have any other gods before me. And then we found out through Jesus who came along and said, I'm here to fulfill the commandments, to fulfill the law. And Jesus said, the greatest commandment is this, to love God with your whole heart, your whole soul, and your whole mind. He said, if you do that, all the other laws and commandments are fulfilled. So we came up with some ideas on how to possibly start that process. So I laid a challenge on me and you that we would be willing to start loving God with our heart and not just with our mind. And that we would give Him special time. And that we would read one chapter. There's 5 chapters in 1 John, that we would read those 5 chapters last week, and then we would spend 5 minutes in prayer, talking to our God, opening our heart up to Him. How many did that? Wow. I'm impressed. It was hard for me. It was hard. I remember one night I'm laying in bed and I think, oh my gosh, I forgot. I'm so tired. And I got to get up tomorrow, prepare a lesson. I was trying to talk myself out of every excuse that I could come up with to do. Why is it so hard? I don't know. It's not just something that's easy. You have to work at it. So if you didn't succeed, I will say to you, try and try again. Don't stop trying. We're not all going to succeed the first week. We're just not going to. I made 4 out of 5. I didn't even make all 5. I couldn't raise my hand with the rest of you. I made 4 out of 5. I didn't get out of bed that night. Okay? I didn't get out of bed that night. I'm the pastor, and I'm just being honest with you. I didn't get out of bed that night. It's not that easy. Even though I have a real desire, and I understand with my mind that if I do build that relationship, I will. It's kind of like this. If you did this, if you made no effort, then don't be surprised that you don't feel close to God. If you didn't make any effort, don't be surprised that you don't feel close to God. And if you don't feel close to God, don't be surprised then if sin creeps into your life. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. So I'm going to make that effort again this week. So my challenge this week to you is read 1 Peter now. There's 5 chapters in 1 Peter. Read 1 chapter each day. You got 7 days to do it. 1 chapter a day, and then spend 5 minutes talking to God. Yeah, Brandon.
So, like you said, you only read 4 out of 5. I only read 3 out of 5. So, do you want us to finish 1 John and then go to 1 Peter?
That's between you and God.
Okay.
Don't do this for me.
Of course not.
Right. That's between you and God.
Okay.
That's between you and God. You can't outgive God.
Okay.
So don't be afraid of reading the whole Bible. You will grow. You will just, in other words, the more you put into it, the more you get out of it. That's basically it. Okay. Now we're going to look at the second commandment. So let's take a look here at Exodus 24-6. And after we read this, most of you are going to go, thank God. There's one commandment that I don't break. Okay? You shall not make for yourself an idol in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. Don't make any idols. Keep going. Verse 5. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the fathers to the 3rd and 4th generation of those who hate me, and showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. So what God is saying here now is, don't make an idol that you worship, that you kneel down and worship. Because right after God gave these commands to Moses, and he's coming down Sinai with the stones, with the commandments, and he gets down the bottom, and what does he see? The Israelites made a golden calf that they were worshiping. And Moses got so upset that he threw the tablets down to the ground and broke them, and had to climb back up the mountain again. to get two more. The Israelites were right. As soon as Moses told them, I'm going up, God's going to speak to me. And while he's up there, they make a golden calf to worship. Now, we can bring the worship team up right now because we don't need to talk about this because I doubt that any of you have idols that you're worshiping. Remember what I said? Jesus came along to say, I'm going to fulfill the commandments now. So I want you to take a look at this stuff. Colossians chapter 3, verse 5. Put to death, therefore, whatever belongs to your earthly nature. That old nature that you had before you came to know God, put that to death. Sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, and greed, which is what? Adultery. And greed, which is idolatry. Just so you can see this again, let's look at Ephesians 5:5, so you know it's not just one time in the Bible. For this you can be sure, no immoral, impure, or greedy person, such a man is an idolater, has any inheritance in the kingdom of Christ and of God. Well, those are harsh words. What he's saying here is if you are immoral, if you are impure, if you are greedy, don't expect to see heaven. You don't have any place in the kingdom of God, any inheritance is coming. Wow. Now, idolatry, don't confuse idolatry with idolatry. Idolatry is sexual. Idolatry is greed. Greed. Wow, now we're looking at something totally different. Something totally different. What does it mean to be greedy? I'm going to give you the definition out of the dictionary. It says excessively desiring, desirous of acquiring or possessing or even wishing to possess more than what you need or deserve. If there's something that's more than what you need or deserve and you are overly desiring it, that's greed. Now, and most people confuse greed with being rich. So most of us in here go, I don't have to worry about that one. Jim, you better watch out. Dave, you better watch out. But we don't have to worry. Listen to this now. And I shared this with you before. Remember I shared with you at Crash when we have pizza every once in a while? And there's some youth that get in the first in the line, take 3-4 pieces when there's not enough for everybody else, and then don't even eat them. That's greed. That's greed. That's being greedy. They don't have anything. I'll guarantee you they don't have a dime in their pocket, but they are still greedy. They are taking more than they deserve and more than they need. That's idolatry. Idolatry. It's like this. Every week, I'm becoming Crash now. Every week there's a certain group that gets to win a candy bar if they win. So I'll put 20 candy bars in front of them. So, okay, pick which one you want. Like bees. Grabbing the candy bar. I wanted that one. Too bad. I got it. Greed. Not even willing to give it to somebody that wanted that one. No, I got it first. You see that with little babies even that do that stuff. So you don't have to be rich to be greedy. You can be greedy without being wealthy. And what does Jesus say about greed? Let's take a look at what Jesus said. Let's look at Matthew chapter 5, verse 40. Because the opposite of greed is what? Generosity. The opposite of greed is giving. Greed is taking or wanting more than we have. The opposite is generous. Giving. Even if you don't have that much, you still give it. So let's take a look at Matthew chapter 5. Do you remember Jesus said, I came to fulfill the law. If someone wants to sue you and take your tunic, let him have your coat as well. If someone says, can I have that shirt? Yeah, here, take the coat too. It's kind of, wow, didn't ask for the coat. Only asked for the shirt, but you give them your coat too. Jesus is teaching us what it means to be different, to be a Christian, to be a light. The world wouldn't do that. We have your shirt. Are you kidding? Buy your own dang shirt. But you got 20 of them. I don't care. Go buy your own. But as a Christian, you're giving them your coat too. And if someone forces you to go 1 mile, you go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, no, boy, this is a hard one. And do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. Oh, gosh. How many of you have ever had a neighbor borrow some of your tools and never brought them back? And he comes and asks again. And he comes and asks again. What's your first response? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? You didn't even bring back the last tool that I gave you. Get out of here. Do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow. No, this is a different one. This is a different one. That's what makes us different. That's what makes us different. Don't be afraid of being used. It's seeing a need and fulfilling the need. That is not being greedy. Wow. Wow. Boy, how many of us are willing to do that? Now let's keep going. Let me just share a story. While he's going to Matthew chapter 6, there's another story in Matthew 18. It's too long, I didn't put it up on the board. There's this man that's under another man, and he owes them quite a bit of money. And the man tells him, give me your money, or I'm going to have you arrested. And the guy pleads with him, please give me more time. I'll pay you back with interest. I just need more time. And so the guy above him had pity on him and said, okay, you do not have to pay me back. And then that man went to the man that owed him money and said, now give me my money. And the guy said, give me more time. No, give me I want it now. But I don't have it now, and had him arrested. And God said, and the man came to him and said, you greedy person, I forgave your debt, but you won't forgive your debt. You are going to pay back 100-fold. Think of all the people that gave to you with no questions asked. But you are not willing now to give to somebody else. That's greed. That's greed. That's idolatry. And what did Jesus just say? You have no place in the kingdom of God. You have no place in the kingdom of God if you are greedy. Whoa. Now, most of us look at greed as money, which it can be. It doesn't have to just be money, but it can be money. But Jesus says, no one can serve two masters. He will either hate one and love the other, or he will be devoted to one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. If you have a strong desire to have more money than you need, or more money than you deserve, and that's your strong desire, that is greed. That is idolatry. And what Jesus is saying, you pursue that, and God's not in the picture. God's not in the picture. But if you put God first, if you are willing to get down on your knees and talk to God and build a relationship to God, greed will slowly ooze out of your life. You'll slowly get rid of greed. God, Jesus promises us that. He promises us that. Now let's look at another one. Luke chapter 12, 15. Says this. Jesus said to them, watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. A man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. You're not a better man or a better woman because you have more possessions. No, the world will look up to you more. The world will look up to you more. Just like we look up to movie stars and rock stars and athletes because they make millions of dollars. So we idolize them. We idolize them. That's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. Just because they have more? What does Jesus say? A man's life is not consistent in the abundance of his possessions. That's not what makes a man a man. What makes a man is being generous with what he does have. That's what makes a man, or a woman a woman. Now let's look at the Old Testament. Proverbs. Solomon, the wrote Proverbs, a man of wisdom, says this in 28:20. A faithful man will be richly blessed, but one eager to get rich will not go unpunished. Oh my gosh, unpunished. If that's all your desire is to just wealth, 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 there's some kind of punishment God talks about. Then let's look at 28:22. A stingy man is eager to get rich and is unaware that poverty awaits him. When you're stingy with what you have and not willing to share it, God says poverty awaits you. Now, it doesn't mean poverty with no money. It just could be spiritual poverty. It could be spiritual poverty. Or, how many times do you see this with famous people? They have everything and they commit suicide. Everything and they commit suicide. It's like, holy smokes. It just goes to show you that poverty awaits them. Poverty awaits them. Now, don't get me wrong. We would all love to win the lottery. I happen not to play it, because it's like giving my money away. But if you did play it, you would love to win it. You'd like to find out for yourself if this is true or not. So you won't want to take God's word for it. You want to find out yourself. Now let's look at Hebrews chapter 13. This is what God says here. Keep your lives free from the love of money and be content with what you have. Because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. Be content with what you doesn't mean, now don't get me wrong, doesn't mean that you don't work hard to get in. That's not what it's talking about. What it's talking about is where you make that making money a priority in your life. You ever talk to somebody and all they ever want to talk about is money? They want to talk about the stock market, and you don't have a clue what they're talking about. You never owned a piece of stock in your life. You didn't even know that existed. And they talk about CDs and all this kind of stuff, and you just thought a CD was a record that you listened to. You didn't know that there was money CDs. You had no idea. Some people that have money, that's all they want to talk about is money. That's greed. That's greed. Let's keep reading. 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 2 says this. Be shepherds, talk about elders. Be shepherds of God's flock that is under your care. Serve it as overseers. Not because you must, but because you're willing, as God wants you to be, not greedy for money, but eager to serve. And over and over. If you're a leader in the church, what God is saying is, if you're a leader in the church, then you shouldn't be eager just for money. You should be willing to use your money to help others. 2 more. 1 Timothy chapter 6. Scott was saying, my gosh, how many verses did you have this morning? And this is what I said. This is a tough subject, so I don't want people to hear what I've got to say. I want them to hear what God has to say. So here's 1 Timothy. People who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge men into ruin and destruction. Keep going. For the love of money is the root of all kinds of evil. Some people eager for money have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. It's the love for the money, putting that ahead of everything else. That's where you can run into some real issues. That's where it's greed. Let's look at 1 Timothy chapter 6, 17. Command those who are rich in this present world. Command. Don't say suggest. Command those that are rich in this present world not to be arrogant nor to put their hope in wealth, but life is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who has richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Don't not share. Share. Nothing wrong with being wealthy, as long as you are generous. As long as you are generous. Some of you could be fortunate enough to have a rich relative that you didn't know about. What's the odds of that? But a rich relative that you didn't know about, and all of a sudden you inherit $3 million. Oh my gosh, would that be incredible? What would you do with that $3 million? What would you do? Could that possibly ruin you and ruin your faith even?
Yes.
I don't need to go to church now. I got everything I need. I don't need to go to church. They'll just want my money. I have to give them 10%. Oh, no. No. I've got 10%, that's 300,000. Are you kidding me? I don't trust Dave with that much money. It could ruin you. It could ruin you, even though every one of us would want that $3 million. I would. What would I do with it? What I do with my money right now? Give it away. Give it away. That's what Christians are supposed to do. What am I going to do? Die with it. Die. I know so many wealthy people that died with their money. They had no joy of giving it away. No joy of giving it away. Remember, the opposite of greed is what? Generosity. Generosity is the opposite of greed. Are you an idolater? Let's look at the last one. 1 John chapter 3, verse 17. You've seen me this verse so many times. Maybe it'll make more sense to you. If anyone has material possessions and sees his brother or sister in need, but has no pity on them, how can the love of God be in him? If you see someone that has a need, you are able to fulfill the need, but you don't do it. How can Jesus be in your life? That's what God is saying. That's what God is saying. Now, let's go back to Exodus chapter 20, verse 4 through 6, because there's something that was in the end of that chapter that we probably just didn't notice. Exodus chapter 4, chapter 5, verse 5. Remember, he says, don't make self an idol. You should not bow down to them, worship them, for I, the Lord, is God, and a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of their fathers to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me. But, verse 6, or the end of verse 5, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. This is what God is saying, okay? If you choose to be greedy, this is a promise. Your children, your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren will also be greedy. Is that what you want? Is that what you want? Because that's what God says. If you choose to be greedy, if you choose to do idolatry, which is greed, if you choose that, then expect that your children are going to be that way, and your grandchildren, and your great-grandchildren. Now, the opposite, if you are generous, then you can expect that your children will be generous. Your grandchildren will be generous, and your great-grandchildren will be generous. That's the way God operates. Which one do you want? I mean, every one of us in this room wants our children to love Jesus. We all want to leave this earth knowing that our children are walking with the Lord and you're going to see Him in heaven. If you have children that have no desire to go to church, have no desire to seek God, and you leave this earth, you are leaving with a void just kind of, what could I have done differently? What could I have done differently? And then when you get grandchildren, oh my gosh. Oh my God, I didn't think you could love grandchildren as much as your own children. Oh my God, I had a terrible dream last, this is really going off on subject, but I had a terrible dream last night when I was with little Josephine, and she always is trying to pick up animals all the time. We're at the park yesterday, she's chasing ducks around to try and catch them. There's no fear of any of them. And I woke up with a nightmare last night that a duck got all of her lip and tore her lip off, and I'm in the hospital with her, and it's kind of like, and I woke up and I couldn't go back to sleep again. Now, if it had been my daughter, I'd have just gone back to sleep and said, well, give her a fake one. But my granddaughter? Oh. I want to leave this earth knowing that my grandkids are walking with Jesus. That's what I want. I want my grandchildren to be generous and not greedy. How's that going to happen? How's that going to happen? You're looking at them. You're looking at them. Only if I'm generous. It's kind of like, you want to see your kids loving God? Then see them with you down on your knees, praying. Now you have a chance. Now you have a chance. They have to see you. They have to see you. It's a promise of God, passed on to different generations. Now, you can be greedy also, in closing, you can be greedy also with your time. With your time, you can be greedy. Just like Liz went to court Tuesday. Lost her daughter. Lost her daughter. She had to sign papers for her daughter to be adopted by her father and stepmother. They're going to change her name. Love Tracy. Tracy was beside her in the courtroom. Now, Tracy has all kinds of time, right? No, Tracy runs her own business. What's it like running your own business? Everybody think, well, if you run your own business, you take time off anytime you want to. It's kind of like, yeah, when you run your own business, you work. You're pulling your tail off. She took time. She took time. You can be greedy with your time and be an idolater. Be an idolater. You can be greedy with your spiritual gifts. You became a Christian as a result of being a Christian. God said, I gave you a spiritual gift to help me build my church. And you say, I'm not going to use it. That's greed. That's greed. That is greed. I know I'm good with working with children, but I'd rather sit in the service and listen to the message. That's greed. That's greed. That's not using the gift that God gave you to help build His church. You can be greedy by not giving an offering. That's greed. That's greed. But I don't have that much. It's not about how much. It's about where's your heart. Where's your heart? Especially a collision. Especially a collision where you know that you're not paying me or Dave or Paul or Mike or anybody else. Okay? I mean, this is what makes us church. Not only do we give our time, we give our resources. We give our money and our time and our spiritual gifts, a result, freely to help Jesus to build His church. Do you? Or do you need that? I need that. We don't need it. I can sit here and tell you, we got enough of the offering where we don't need your money. But you do. You do. You need to learn to be generous. Or you're an idolater. You are greedy. You are greedy. And God says, you have no place in His kingdom. Now, like a lot of this, we have to learn to do this stuff. I was in a church for I don't know how many years, and I never gave money. I didn't grow up learning to give. I didn't grow up learning to give. So I figured, I'm giving my time, I'm giving my talents, that's enough. And then I'd walk around and see lights on in the building. And say, I'm not giving my money to pay for a light bill when they don't even shut the lights off. They don't turn the air conditioner. I had every reason and excuse in the book. My heart just wasn't there. I had to learn to do that. Just like you have to learn to get down on your knees and talk to God. You have to learn to read His book. It doesn't just happen overnight. We have to learn to do those things. So, are you breaking the second commandment? Are you greedy or are you generous? Only you can answer that question. Only you can answer that question. I love it when I see a young person with an envelope and a crumpled dollar bill in it. Because I know that that's probably only $1 or $2 that they had. But they gave it. But they gave it to the offering. That's awesome. Not enough of us teach our children to do this. Do you remember it said, you want your children to love Jesus, love God? They need to see you down on your knees. You want to see them not being greedy? They need to see you giving to the offering. And then your children grow up automatically doing those things. If you have a child that's in high school or college and they are not giving, it's because they didn't see you giving. They didn't see you giving. They didn't learn it. They didn't learn it. If you have a child that doesn't have a love for the Word, it's because they never saw you reading it. If you have a child that's not in love with Jesus, it's because they never saw you down on your knees when they got up in the morning and went to bed that night. You don't do it to be seen, but it makes a difference. It makes a difference. Now, many of you are doing this. Many of you are already doing this. I'm preaching to the choir. Many of you are doing this, but some of us are not. Some of us are not. Don't do it for me. Do it for God. Do it for God. Because it's God's will for your life.